In a quiet town full of secrets and social divides, 10-year-old Lily Johnson and her hard-working mother, Sarah, face life's challenges with courage and love. Living on the outskirts of privilege, Sarah has spent years trying to protect Lily from the harsh realities of their world. But when an unexpected encounter at a lavish party thrusts their lives into the spotlight, old wounds are reopened and long-hidden truths come to light. As whispers of betrayal, family ties, and second chances echo through their lives, Sarah and Lily must navigate a delicate balance between the past and the present. From the cruelty of schoolyard bullies to the kindness of unexpected allies, Lily finds her strength in a small, flourishing garden, a symbol of resilience that grows as she does. Meanwhile, Sarah is faced with a choice: remain silent about the injustices surrounding her, or risk everything to stand up for the truth. What follows is a heartfelt journey of redemption, forgiveness, and hope. Through their struggles, Sarah and Lily discover the power of community and the strength that comes from embracing both the pain and promise of their story. But will they be able to rise above the shadows of the past and find their place in the world? Lily Johnson clutched her mother's hand tightly as they walked up the cobblestone driveway to the grand Parker estate. The mansion loomed above them, its lights twinkling like a beacon of a world they could never truly belong to. Lily, just 10 years old, wore a simple dress her mother had sewn for her, a soft blue cotton outfit that, while neat, felt woefully inadequate among the sea of glittering gowns and tailored suits that awaited them inside. "Remember, Lily," Sarah whispered, her voice calm but firm, "we are here to work. Stay in the kitchen with me, and do not wander off." Lily nodded, though her eyes lingered on the ornate door as it opened to reveal a dazzling ballroom. Inside, chandeliers sparkled, and laughter echoed through the space, mingling with the soft hum of classical music. It was a world of elegance and refinement, one that stirred both curiosity and a quiet yearning in Lily's heart. Sarah and Lily were housekeepers, though Sarah preferred the term caretaker. She had worked tirelessly to ensure that Lily never felt ashamed of their circumstances. But Lily, as young as she was, could not help but notice the divide. She saw it in the polished shoes of the guests and in the way the Parkers barely acknowledged Sarah when giving instructions. The kitchen was bustling with activity as caterers and staff rushed to prepare trays of hors d'oeuvres. Sarah directed Lily to a small corner where she could fold napkins. "Stay here," Sarah said again, her voice firmer this time. But the excitement of the party was too much for Lily to resist. After folding the last napkin, she slipped out of the kitchen and into the ballroom. She was drawn to the music, to the way the women's gowns swirled like clouds as they danced. She stood by the edge of the room, her small frame almost invisible among the towering adults. For a moment, she felt a spark of magic. Who let her in here? The words hit her like a sharp wind, and she turned to see Emily Parker, the 12-year-old daughter of the Parkers, standing with a smug smile. Emily was dressed in a frothy pink gown, her blonde curls shining under the chandelier light. She looked every bit the princess she believed herself to be. "That's the maid's daughter," Emily declared loudly, drawing the attention of nearby guests. The room seemed to quiet, and all eyes turned to Lily. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks, her hands trembling as she clutched the sides of her dress. "What are you doing here?" Emily continued, her tone dripping with mockery. "You do not belong. Look at those shoes." She pointed at Lily's scuffed flats, and the room erupted into soft chuckles. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, but her feet felt glued to the polished floor. The laughter echoed in her ears, louder than the music. She looked around, hoping for a friendly face, but found none. Just then, Sarah appeared, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with determination. "Lily, come here," she said, her voice steady. She placed a protective arm around her daughter and faced the crowd. I apologize if my daughter's presence disturbed anyone, Sarah said, her voice calm but edged with hurt. We will leave immediately. As they turned to go, a voice called out, stopping them in their tracks. Wait! The man who spoke was tall and gray-haired, with sharp eyes that softened as they landed on Lily. He was David Carter, a guest who had arrived late and watched the entire scene unfold from the doorway. This child does not deserve such treatment, he said, his voice carrying a quiet authority. And neither does her mother. The crowd murmured, but David stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. A child's worth is not measured by her shoes or her dress. Shame on all of you for making her feel otherwise. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. She tightened her hold on Lily, unsure of what to say. David turned to Sarah, his expression warm. Ms. Johnson, I would like to speak with you, if you will allow me. Sarah hesitated, but the sincerity in David's voice convinced her to nod. The two of them, along with Lily, left the ballroom together. In a quiet sitting room, David gestured for them to sit. Lily clung to her mother's side, still shaken. I apologize for intruding, David began, his voice gentle. But I could not stand by and watch that unfold. I was once a boy in worn shoes, and I know how cruel people can be. Sarah studied him, her brow furrowed. You do not need to apologize, Mr. Carter. I appreciate your kindness. But why? David's expression grew thoughtful. Because kindness is something I can offer. I saw your daughter's courage, standing there as the world judged her, and I see your strength, working to provide her a life filled with dignity. Lily peeked up at David, her curiosity piqued. She had never heard an adult speak so kindly about her and her mother. David smiled at her. What is your name, young lady? Lily, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Well, Lily, David said, his tone warm. I believe you are quite remarkable. Lily's lips trembled, and tears filled her eyes. It was the first time someone outside her mother had said such words to her. She hugged Sarah tightly, finding comfort in her mother's embrace. David turned to Sarah. I hope you will allow me to help. I know it is not my place to interfere, but I believe I can offer opportunities that could make a difference in your lives. Sarah hesitated, her protective instincts flaring. Mr. Carter, I am not sure what you mean. I own a small foundation, David explained. We support families like yours, providing access to education, housing, and other resources. There is no obligation, but the offer stands. Sarah looked at Lily, who gazed back with wide, hopeful eyes. The weight of their struggles hung between them, a silent reminder of all they had endured. I will think about it, Sarah said finally, but thank you. David nodded, respecting her caution. Take all the time you need. As they left the mansion that night, Lily held her mother's hand tightly. Her heart filled with a mix of emotions. Shame still lingered, but it was tempered by the unexpected kindness they had encountered. In the car ride home, Lily whispered, Mom, do you think things can get better? Sarah smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. I believe they can, Lily. Sometimes, it just takes one kind person to remind us of the possibilities. Lily leaned against her mother's shoulder, her mind turning over David's words. For the first time in a long while, hope flickered in her heart. And so, their journey began. The ride home was quiet, the soft hum of the car engine filling the silence as Sarah stared out the window, lost in thought. Lily leaned against her mother, her small fingers clutching Sarah's sleeve. The night had been a whirlwind of emotions, humiliation, anger, and strangely, a faint glimmer of hope. As they arrived at their modest apartment on the outskirts of town, Sarah unlocked the door and flicked on the light. The single-bedroom space was small but tidy, every corner meticulously maintained by Sarah's diligent hands. A threadbare couch sat in the living room, alongside a wooden coffee table scarred with scratches from years of use. The faint scent of lavender lingered, a testament to Sarah's efforts to make the space feel like home, despite its limitations. Lily kicked off her shoes and sank into the couch. Her wide eyes followed her mother as Sarah moved about the apartment, her movements brisk but not hurried. Sarah set her bag on the table, her hands trembling slightly as she began unpacking the leftover containers from the party's catering. "Mom," Lily said softly, "why were they so mean to us?" Sarah froze for a moment, her back to Lily. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply before turning around. "Some people, they forget that we are all the same inside, Lily. It is easier for them to judge than to understand." Lily's brow furrowed. "But I did not do anything wrong." "No, sweetheart, you didn't." Sarah knelt in front of Lily, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Never let anyone make you feel small, no matter what they say. You are kind and brave, and that is what matters." Lily nodded, but her small shoulders sagged. "Do you think that man meant what he said, Mr. Carter?" Sarah hesitated. David Carter's words had been kind, but life had taught her to be wary of unexpected generosity. Still, she had seen the sincerity in his eyes, and it had stirred something deep within her, a longing she had buried long ago. "I think he did," Sarah said finally, "but kindness from others doesn't mean we stop working hard ourselves. We still have to make our own way." Lily seemed to accept this, though a faint shadow lingered in her expression. Sarah kissed her forehead and sent her off to bed, knowing that sleep would not come easily for either of them. Long after Lily had fallen asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with an old shoebox in front of her. The box was worn, its edges frayed, and it carried the weight of memories Sarah had tried to forget. Slowly, she lifted the lid and began sifting through its contents: faded photographs, handwritten notes, and a single letter sealed in an envelope that had yellowed with age. Her fingers hovered over the letter before picking it up. She unfolded it carefully, the paper crackling in the quiet room. The words on the page were as familiar as they were painful. "My dearest Sarah, I wish things were different. I wish I had the courage to stand by you and the child we created. But I am not strong enough to fight my family's expectations. They have made it clear that my connection to you would ruin us both. Please forgive me for my cowardice. Yours always." David. Sarah let out a shaky breath, her fingers trembling as she reread the letter. It had been written nearly 11 years ago, just before Lily was born. She had not thought about David Carter in years, convincing herself that he had been little more than a fleeting mistake. But now, his sudden reappearance in her life made her question everything. Why had he chosen this moment to intervene? Had he known about Lily all along, or was this some act of contrition for a past he could no longer ignore? Her mind swirled with questions as she placed the letter back in the box. A part of her wanted to confront David, to demand answers, but another part of her feared reopening wounds that had barely healed. The next morning, Sarah found Lily in the tiny dining area, drawing in her sketchbook. It was an old book, its pages wrinkled from use, but Lily treasured it as her escape from the world. She loved to draw scenes of nature, flowers, birds, and sprawling fields of green she had only ever seen in pictures. "Good morning, sweetie," Sarah said, running a hand through Lily's hair. "What are you working on?" "A garden," Lily replied, her voice still laced with sleep. "With lots of flowers and a big tree. I think it would be nice to have a garden." Sarah smiled, her heart aching with both pride and sorrow. "It is beautiful, Lily. Maybe someday we can have a little garden of our own." "Do you think Mr. Carter has a garden?" Lily asked, tilting her head. Sarah paused, surprised by the question. "I do not know. Maybe." Lily set her pencil down and looked up at her mother. "He said we were remarkable. Do you think he meant it?" Sarah crouched beside her, looking into her daughter's earnest eyes. "I think he saw something special in you, Lily, because you are special." Lily smiled faintly, and for the first time since the party, a hint of her usual brightness returned. Later that day, Sarah made her way to the cafe where David had suggested they meet. She had spent the morning debating whether to go, but ultimately decided that she owed it to Lily to find out the truth. David was already seated at a corner table when she arrived, his posture straight and his expression calm. He stood as Sarah approached, gesturing for her to sit. "Thank you for coming," he said, his tone gentle. "I know this must be overwhelming." Sarah sat across from him, folding her hands tightly in her lap. "I want to know why you are here. After all this time, why now?" David sighed, his gaze heavy with regret. "I have spent years searching for you, Sarah. When I realized you had left town, I hired investigators to track you down. It was not until recently that I found you and learned about Lily." Sarah's heart clenched. "You hired investigators? Why? So you could ease your conscience?" David leaned forward, his voice earnest. "No, because I wanted to make things right. I know I failed you, Sarah. I failed both of you. But I want to help now, if you will let me." Sarah studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity. She saw none, only the raw vulnerability of a man burdened by his own choices. "I do not know if I can trust you," she admitted, "but I will think about what you said." David nodded, respecting her caution. "That is all I can ask." As Sarah walked home, her thoughts were a jumble of uncertainty and guarded hope. For the first time in years, the walls she had built around her heart began to crack, just a little. And in that small crack, a sliver of possibility shone through. Sarah could barely sleep that night. The weight of David's confession sat heavy in her chest, like a stone she could not shake off. She kept replaying their conversation in her mind, searching for signs that his intentions were genuine. Each time, she arrived at the same uncertain conclusion. Morning light streamed through the thin curtains in their apartment, casting soft shadows across the room. Lily was already up, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with her sketchbook. Her pencil moved in quick, sure strokes as she added details to the garden she had been drawing the day before. "Morning, Mom," Lily said, without looking up. "I'm making the flowers brighter today." Sarah smiled faintly as she moved toward the kitchen to brew a pot of coffee. "That's a nice idea, sweetheart. Bright flowers make every garden better." Lily's head tilted, her curiosity piqued. "Mom, do you think Mr. Carter will come back?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She poured the coffee, the warm aroma filling the small space, as she considered her response. "I think he might," she said cautiously. "He seemed serious about helping us." Lily set her pencil down and hugged her knees. "Do you trust him?" Sarah hesitated. "I do not know yet, Lily. Trust takes time. But if he really means what he says, maybe it's worth giving him a chance." Lily nodded thoughtfully, her young mind grappling with the complexity of adult emotions. "I hope he is nice. He seemed nice." Later that afternoon, Sarah heard a knock at the door. Her heart jumped in her chest as she approached, wiping her hands on her apron. When she opened the door, David stood there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. His suit was neatly pressed, and he carried himself with an air of quiet humility. "Good afternoon," he said, offering the flowers to Sarah. "I thought these might brighten your home." Sarah hesitated before accepting the bouquet. "Thank you. That's very kind." David glanced behind her, his eyes softening as he spotted Lily peeking out from the kitchen doorway. "Hello, Lily," he said warmly. "It's nice to see you again." Lily stepped forward cautiously, her small hands gripping the edge of the doorway. "Hi." David knelt slightly, lowering himself to her eye level. "I hear you're quite the artist. What are you drawing today?" Lily's face brightened, and she ran to fetch her sketchbook. She flipped through the pages before holding it up for David to see. This is my garden. It has a big tree and lots of flowers. David studied the drawing, nodding with admiration. It's beautiful. You have a real talent. Lily beamed, the warmth in David's voice dispelling some of her earlier uncertainty. Sarah watched the interaction, her emotions a mix of gratitude and guarded hope. I would like to talk to both of you, if that's all right, David said, straightening. There's something important I need to share. Sarah nodded, leading him to the small dining table. Lily sat beside her, her sketchbook still clutched to her chest. David took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he began. Lily, there is something I need to tell you. It's about me and how I know your mother. Lily's eyes widened, and she glanced at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. I am your grandfather, David said softly. Your mother is my daughter. Lily stared at him, her expression frozen with shock. Grandfather, she whispered, the word unfamiliar on her lips. David nodded. Yes, I know this might be hard to understand, but I want you to know how much I regret not being there for you and your mom sooner. Lily turned to Sarah, her small face etched with confusion. Mom, is that true? Sarah reached for Lily's hand, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions within her. Yes, sweetheart, David is my father, but we were apart for a long time. Why? Lily asked, her innocent question cutting straight to the heart of the matter. David's shoulders sagged slightly, his voice tinged with regret. Because I made mistakes. I let fear and pride keep me from doing what was right. But I'm here now, and I want to make things better, if you'll let me. Lily blinked back tears, her young mind struggling to process the revelation. Does that mean we're a family? Sarah squeezed her hand gently. Families are not always perfect, Lily, but they can grow and heal if we try. David leaned forward, his voice filled with quiet determination. That's what I want, Lily. I want to be part of your life and help you and your mom in any way I can. Lily looked at him, her tears spilling over. Okay, she said finally, her voice small but resolute. But you have to promise not to leave us again. David's heart ached at the vulnerability in her words. I promise, he said, his voice firm. The following days passed in a whirlwind. David visited often, bringing books for Lily and groceries for the household. At first, Sarah remained wary, unsure if his generosity came with strings attached. But as she watched him with Lily, his gentle encouragement, his patient answers to her endless questions, she began to see a side of him she had not expected. Lily, too, began to open up. She shared her drawings with David, and even showed him her favorite hiding spot in the park nearby. For the first time in years, she felt what it might mean to have a family that extended beyond just her and her mother. One afternoon, as David helped Lily plant a small pot of daisies on the windowsill, Sarah stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Why now, David? She asked quietly. David looked up, meeting her gaze. Because it took me too long to realize what matters most. I spent years chasing success, thinking it would fill the emptiness inside. But all I ever wanted was to have my family back. Sarah studied him, her defenses slowly crumbling. I want to believe you. For Lily's sake, I want to believe you. David nodded. Then let me prove it. Not with words, but with actions. That evening, Sarah and Lily sat together on the couch, the small pot of daisies perched on the windowsill nearby. The apartment felt brighter, not just because of the flowers, but because of the growing presence of hope. Mom, Lily said, resting her head on Sarah's shoulder, do you think Grandpa is staying for good? Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I think he wants to, Lily. And maybe we should give him a chance. As they sat together, the weight of the past began to lift, making room for the possibility of a new future. For the first time in a long time, Sarah allowed herself to believe that they might not have to face the world alone. The next morning, Lily walked to school with a bounce in her step that Sarah hadn't seen in weeks. She carried her worn backpack, a hand-me-down from a thrift shop, but her spirits were high. The thought of having a grandfather, someone who genuinely cared for her and her mom, made her feel stronger. At the school gates, Lily hesitated. Her joy dimmed as she remembered the taunts and whispers she faced daily. Emily Parker and her friends had made Lily's life a silent battlefield, their cruel words following her down the hallways like shadows. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the straps of her backpack and walked inside. The classroom was loud as usual, with kids chatting and laughing before the teacher arrived. Lily slid into her seat near the back, pulling out her notebook. She tried to focus on her doodle's small flowers and animals that spilled across the margins of her pages, but a familiar voice broke through her concentration. "Well, look who decided to show up," Emily said, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Lily kept her head down, hoping to go unnoticed, but Emily was relentless. "Hey, maid girl," she sneered, leaning over Lily's desk. "Did you forget your mop at home?" A few kids giggled, and Lily felt the heat rising in her cheeks. She clenched her pencil tightly, willing herself not to cry. "Leave me alone, Emily," Lily said quietly, though her voice shook. Emily smirked. "Aw, did I hurt your feelings? Maybe you should tell your mom to clean faster so you can buy better clothes." The bell rang, cutting off Emily's taunts as the teacher walked in. Lily exhaled shakily, her hands trembling as she pretended to take notes. The rest of the day passed in a blur of half-heard lessons and muffled whispers. By the time the final bell rang, Lily felt drained. On the walk home, Lily trudged along the sidewalk, her head low. Her usual route took her past the community park, where she often stopped to sit by the old oak tree and draw. Today, however, she had no energy for even that small comfort. "Hey!" a voice called from behind her. Lily turned to see a boy her age jogging to catch up. He had messy brown hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She recognized him as Ethan, a quiet boy from her class who often sat near the front. "You dropped this," Ethan said, holding out a small sketch Lily hadn't realized she'd lost. "Thanks," Lily mumbled, taking the paper. She looked down at it, a quick drawing of a bird in flight, one of her favorites. Ethan glanced at her backpack. "You like to draw?" Lily nodded, unsure why he was talking to her. Most kids stayed out of her way, afraid of becoming Emily's next target. "That's cool," Ethan said, his tone sincere. "I'm not great at drawing, but I like reading, especially adventure stories." Lily blinked, surprised. "Me too. My mom got me this book about a boy who finds a magic key. It's my favorite." Ethan's smile widened. "I've read that one. It's so good. The part with the dragon was awesome." For the first time that day, Lily felt her shoulders relax. She and Ethan walked the rest of the way home, talking about books and the stories they loved. When they reached Lily's apartment building, Ethan waved goodbye, promising to bring her a new book the next day. That evening, Lily told her mother about her new friend over dinner. Sarah listened with a smile, happy to see the light back in her daughter's eyes. "Ethan sounds like a kind boy," Sarah said. "It's good to have friends who make you feel supported." Lily nodded, her fork poking at the macaroni on her plate. "He's nice. He doesn't care that we're different." Sarah reached across the table, placing a hand over Lily's. "You are not different, Lily. You are strong, kind, and brave. And that is what truly matters." The next day, Lily arrived at school feeling a little more confident. Ethan waved her over to his desk before class, handing her a worn paperback with a dragon on the cover. "It's my favorite," he said. "You can borrow it." "Thanks," Lily said, her smile genuine. But as the day went on, Emily took notice of Lily's growing confidence, and she did not like it. At recess, Emily and her friends cornered Lily by the swings. "Making friends now, huh?" Emily said, her arms crossed. "That's cute." Lily backed away, gripping the book Ethan had given her. "Leave me alone, Emily." Emily smirked, stepping closer. "Or what? Are you going to cry again?" Lily's heart pounded, but she refused to let Emily see her fear. Just as Emily reached for the book, Ethan appeared, stepping between them. "Leave her alone," Ethan said firmly, his voice steady despite the tension. Emily raised an eyebrow. "Oh, look, the Maid girl's knight in shining armor. How romantic." "Whatever," Ethan said, unbothered by her words. "Come on, Lily. Let's go." He took Lily's hand and led her away from the group. Lily's cheeks burned with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Thanks," she said quietly, once they were out of earshot. "Don't let her get to you," Ethan said. "She's just a bully. People like that only have power if you let them." Lily nodded, his words sinking in. For the first time, she realized that Emily's taunts did not have to define her. She was more than the labels people tried to put on her. When Lily got home, David was there, sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah. He greeted Lily with a warm smile. "How was school, Lily?" he asked. Lily hesitated before answering. "It was better." Sarah gave her an encouraging look. "Did something good happen?" "I made a new friend," Lily said. "And I stood up to Emily, kind of." David's expression turned serious. "Did she bother you again?" Lily shrugged. "A little, but Ethan helped. He said people like her only have power if you let them." David nodded thoughtfully. "Ethan sounds like a wise young man. And he's right. You are stronger than you think, Lily." That night, as Lily lay in bed, she thought about Ethan's words and her mother's encouragement. The hurt from Emily's bullying still lingered, but it felt smaller now, like a shadow in the corner of her mind. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to believe that things could change. She had her mother, her grandfather, and now, a friend who saw her for who she truly was. And that, she realized, was enough to keep going. The following week brought unexpected changes that neither Sarah nor Lily had anticipated. One evening, David knocked on the door carrying a folder and a thoughtful expression. He looked both excited and slightly apprehensive as Sarah let him in. "I've been thinking about your situation," David began, settling into one of the mismatched chairs at the dining table. "I want to offer you and Lily a chance to start fresh, a new beginning." Sarah's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" David opened the folder, pulling out several documents. "I own a property just outside the city. It's modest but spacious, with room for Lily to play and grow. It would give you both a place where you're not constantly reminded of everything." Sarah stiffened, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "David, I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't want charity. We're fine where we are." "It's not charity," David said, his tone gentle but firm. "It's family. I've failed you for years, Sarah, and I'm trying to make up for that. This isn't about pity, it's about giving you and Lily the life you deserve." Sarah glanced at Lily, who was watching the conversation with wide, curious eyes. "Mom, what's he talking about?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "Your grandfather wants us to move to a new house." "A new house?" Lily's voice rose with excitement, but she quickly caught herself. "Do you want to, Mom?" Sarah sighed, conflicted. She looked at David, then at Lily. "Let me think about it." That night, Sarah stayed up long after Lily had gone to bed. She sat on the couch with the documents spread before her, staring at the detailed pictures of the property. The house was beautiful, a small two-story home, with a porch that overlooked a garden. There was even a swing hanging from an old oak tree in the backyard. It looked like a place out of Lily's drawings, but doubt gnawed at her. Could she trust David's intentions? And if she accepted his help, would it come with unspoken obligations? The thought of giving Lily a safer, happier place to live made her heart ache. Their apartment, while a haven of love, was still a daily reminder of their struggles. The thin walls let in the noise of the street, and the constant worry about rent weighed heavily on Sarah. Maybe this was a chance to give Lily the stability she had always wanted for her. The next morning, Sarah sat Lily down. "Sweetheart, how would you feel about moving to a new house?" Lily's face lit up. "Really? We'd have a yard and maybe a garden?" "Yes," Sarah said with a smile. "It would be different from here, but it might be nice. What do you think?" Lily's excitement bubbled over. "I'd love it. We could plant flowers and maybe even have a tree house." Sarah laughed softly, her daughter's enthusiasm easing some of her worries. "Okay then, let's give it a try." The move happened quickly. Within a week, Sarah and Lily were packing up their belongings, which fit into just a few boxes. Ethan came by to help, and David arranged for a small moving truck. As they pulled up to their new home, Lily's eyes grew wide with wonder. The house was even more beautiful in person. The white siding gleamed in the sunlight, and a cheerful blue door welcomed them. The garden was overgrown, but bursting with potential, and the oak tree in the back looked strong and sturdy. "This is amazing," Lily whispered as they stepped inside. "It's like a dream." Sarah smiled, though a knot of uncertainty still twisted in her stomach. David showed them around, pointing out small repairs he had already made and areas they could personalize. Lily raced upstairs, claiming a bedroom with a view of the garden. "Mom, look!" she called from the window. "I can see the whole backyard." Sarah laughed, her heart softening as she watched her daughter's joy. Maybe this was the right decision after all. As the days passed, Lily quickly adapted to her new surroundings. She spent hours exploring the garden, sketching plans for where she would plant flowers, and imagining all the ways she could make the space her own. David visited often, bringing small gifts like gardening tools and books about plants. Sarah, however, found herself struggling to adjust. The house was larger and quieter than their apartment, and she felt out of place among the unfamiliar neighbors. Though she was grateful for David's help, a small part of her still held back, unsure if she could truly trust his intentions. One afternoon, as Sarah was unpacking the last of their kitchen items, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile stood on the porch. "Hi, I'm Susan. I live down the street," the woman said, holding out a plate of cookies. "I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." Sarah blinked, taken aback by the unexpected kindness. "Oh, thank you. That's very thoughtful." Susan glanced past Sarah, noticing Lily in the garden. "Your daughter looks like she's having a great time out there. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her. "Thank you, Susan. That means a lot." As Susan left, Sarah placed the cookies on the counter and looked out the window at Lily. Her daughter was kneeling in the dirt, carefully planting the daisies David had given her. For the first time since they had moved, Sarah felt a flicker of belonging. That evening, Sarah sat on the porch with David as Lily played in the yard. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the garden. "This place suits you," David said, his voice quiet. Sarah nodded. "Lily loves it. And I think I'm starting to see the good in it too." David turned to her, his expression serious. "I know it will take time, Sarah, for you to trust me, but I'll keep showing up every day, for as long as it takes." Sarah looked at him, her heart softening despite her lingering doubts. "Thank you, David, for everything." As the stars began to appear, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The house wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of new possibilities, of a future where she and Lily could thrive. For the first time, Sarah allowed herself to believe that this new beginning might truly lead to something beautiful. The new house brought a sense of comfort and possibility, but it also came with whispers. News of Sarah and Lily's connection to David Carter had spread quickly in the community, and while some neighbors, like Susan, welcomed them warmly, others were less kind. At the local grocery store, Sarah could feel the eyes of other shoppers on her. Whispers floated behind her as she picked out apples for Lily's school lunch. "Isn't that the woman who moved into the Carter house? Her daughter's the one who—" The rest of the sentence trailed off, but Sarah didn't need to hear it. She could guess. She kept her head high and her focus on her task, though her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the fruit. Meanwhile, Lily was finding her place in their new neighborhood. She spent hours in the backyard, her small garden beginning to take shape with a mix of daisies, sunflowers, and marigolds. The once overgrown patch now looked vibrant and full of life, much like Lily herself. One afternoon, while planting tulip bulbs, Lily heard a familiar voice from beyond the fence. "Hey, Lily!" She looked up to see Ethan peeking over the wooden slats. His hair was messy, and his face was smudged with dirt, but his grin was bright. "Hi, Ethan," Lily called back, waving. "What are you doing here?" "My cousin lives down the street," he explained, climbing onto the fence to get a better view. "I visit him sometimes. Your garden looks awesome," Lily beamed. "Thanks. Want to help?" Ethan hesitated for only a moment before swinging himself over the fence. "Sure, what do I do?" The two spent the afternoon digging holes and carefully placing the bulbs, laughing as they got dirt on their clothes and faces. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, her heart lifting at the sound of Lily's laughter. It had been a long time since she had seen her daughter so carefree. As Lily's garden flourished, so did her confidence. She started taking small bouquets to school, giving them to her teacher or classmates. The simple gesture began to shift the way others saw her. One day, Emily Parker approached Lily during recess. Lily tensed, expecting the usual taunts. But Emily's expression was different, less smug, more curious. "Are those from your garden?" Emily asked, pointing to the flowers in Lily's hand. "Yes," Lily said cautiously. "Do you want one?" Emily blinked, clearly surprised. Sure." Lily handed her a bright yellow sunflower. Emily took it, her face softening. "Thanks," she mumbled before walking away. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. For Lily, it was enough to give her hope that even the hardest hearts could change. While Lily found small victories at school, Sarah continued to navigate the complexities of her new reality. David's frequent visits had drawn the attention of the community, sparking both admiration and envy. At a town council meeting, where David was presenting a plan for a new community park, one man spoke up, his tone sharp. "It's nice to see you so generous, Mr. Carter, but how do we know this isn't just some stunt to boost your reputation?" The room fell silent. David's expression remained calm, but Sarah, sitting in the back row, felt her chest tighten. "It's not a stunt," David said firmly. "It's about giving back to a town that has been good to me. And yes, I've made mistakes in the past, but I'm trying to do better. For my family and for this community." The murmurs that followed were mixed, but Sarah noticed a few people nodding in approval. For the first time, she saw David not just as her estranged father, but as a man trying to rebuild his life, just as she was. One evening, as Sarah and Lily sat on the porch watching the sunset, Susan stopped by with a basket of fresh-baked bread. She sat with them, chatting about the neighborhood and sharing stories about her children. "You know," Susan said, turning to Sarah, "people will always talk. It's what they do. But the ones who matter will see the truth." Sarah smiled faintly, her shoulders relaxing. "Thank you, Susan. That means a lot." Lily chimed in, holding up one of her drawings. "I'm making a sign for our garden. It's going to say, 'Lily's Bloom Spot.' What do you think?" "I think it's perfect," Susan said, her smile warm. "And it suits you, Lily." As the days turned into weeks, the whispers in the community began to fade, replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, respect. Sarah and Lily became a regular sight at the local farmers' market, where Lily often traded flowers for fresh produce. David's efforts to improve the town gained traction, and more people began to see his sincerity. One Saturday, As Lily and Sarah set up a small flower stall at the market, a young girl approached with her mother. The girl shyly handed Lily a small pot of lavender. "I heard you like flowers," she said. "I grew this one." Lily's face lit up. "It's beautiful, thank you." The girl smiled, and her mother nodded at Sarah. "Your daughter has a good heart. She's teaching the other kids about kindness." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she thanked the woman. She looked at Lily, who was chatting excitedly with the girl, and felt a surge of pride. Despite everything they had been through, her daughter's spirit remained unbroken. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she sat on the edge of her daughter's mattress, stroking her hair. "Lily," she said softly, "I'm so proud of you. The way you've handled everything, the move, school, the garden, you've shown so much strength." Lily yawned, her eyes heavy with sleep. "It's because I have you, Mom, and Grandpa, and Ethan. You all make me feel like I can do anything." Sarah kissed her forehead, her heart swelling with love. "You can, Lily. You really can." As Sarah turned out the light and closed the door, she paused in the hallway, looking at the small pot of lavender Lily had placed on her dresser. The house, once just a symbol of change, now felt like home. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Sarah believed they were on the right path. Together, they were planting seeds of hope, one bloom at a time. The crisp morning air carried the scent of freshly turned soil as Lily knelt in her garden, her hands carefully pressing new seeds into the earth. It had become her sanctuary, a place where she felt strong and connected to something bigger than herself. Sarah watched from the porch, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. The sight of her daughter so full of life and purpose filled her with a bittersweet pride. The peaceful moment was interrupted by the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. A sleek black car pulled up, and Sarah's breath caught as the door opened to reveal Emily Parker and her mother, Mrs. Parker. Sarah quickly stood, her instincts warning her that this was not a friendly visit. "Mrs. Johnson," Mrs. Parker said as she approached, her voice cool and her smile thin. "May we have a word?" Sarah nodded reluctantly, gesturing to the porch. Lily watched from the garden, her curiosity piqued, but her instincts telling her to stay out of sight. "I'll get straight to the point," Mrs. Parker said as they sat. "Your daughter's little flower stand at the market has become quite the talk of the town." Sarah tilted her head, unsure where this was leading. "Lily's flowers bring her joy. I don't see the harm in that." "No harm," Mrs. Parker said, her smile hardening. "But I must say, it's quite bold of you to claim a place in this community after everything." Sarah's jaw tightened. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Mrs. Parker leaned closer, her tone dropping to a whisper. "People remember who you were, Mrs. Johnson. The maid. The outsider. And now, with David Carter's name attached to yours, you've become quite the spectacle. But some of us aren't so easily fooled." Sarah's hands clenched around her mug, but she forced her voice to remain steady. "I've worked hard for everything I have, Mrs. Parker, and so has Lily. We don't need your approval to live our lives." Mrs. Parker sat back, her smile returning, but her eyes cold. "Well, just be careful, Mrs. Johnson. The higher you climb, the harder the fall." As the Parker car disappeared down the driveway, Lily came to stand beside Sarah, her small hand slipping into her mother's. "Mom, is everything okay?" Sarah looked down at her daughter, forcing a reassuring smile. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Let's finish up in the garden." But the conversation lingered in Sarah's mind all day. The Parker family's words echoed with an edge of warning, a reminder of the fragile balance they had achieved. That night, as Lily slept soundly, Sarah pulled out the shoebox of letters she had kept hidden for years. One envelope caught her eye. It was older than the others, its edges yellowed and frayed. She unfolded the paper, her hands trembling slightly as she read Edward Parker's familiar handwriting. "My dearest Sarah, I know what we had was brief, but I must be honest with you. Victoria has discovered our relationship, and she is furious. She's threatened to ruin both of us if I don't distance myself immediately. I am so sorry, Sarah. I hope one day you will forgive me for this cowardice. Yours, Edward. The letter blurred before Sarah's eyes as anger, sadness, and frustration welled up inside her. Edward Parker had been a part of her life long before David's reappearance, but his betrayal had left a wound that never quite healed. And now, his wife was here, threatening her and Lily's future. Sarah placed the letter back in the box and closed the lid firmly. She couldn't let the Parkers' manipulations define her life anymore. It was time to confront the past. The next morning, Sarah called David. "I need to talk to you," she said. "It's about the Parkers." David arrived within the hour, his expression concerned as Sarah showed him the letter. He read it carefully, his brow furrowing with every line. "So, Edward Parker knew about Lily?" David asked, his voice low. Sarah nodded. "He knew, and he walked away when his wife threatened him." David's jaw tightened, and his eyes darkened. "This changes everything. The Parkers have no right to intimidate you." "They don't," Sarah said, her voice steady. "But I'm tired of running from them. I want to face this head on." David placed a hand on hers, his expression softening. "I'll stand with you, Sarah, whatever you decide to do." That afternoon, Sarah drove to the Parker estate, her heart pounding as she pulled up the long driveway. She had never expected to return here, but as she stepped out of the car, a wave of determination washed over her. Mrs. Parker greeted her at the door, her smile as sharp as ever. "Mrs. Johnson, to what do we owe this surprise?" "I need to speak with your husband," Sarah said firmly. "It's about Lily." Mrs. Parker's eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside, leading Sarah to Edward's study. He looked up from his desk as she entered, his face pale with surprise. "Sarah," he said, standing. "What?" "I found your letter, Edward," Sarah interrupted, her voice cutting through the room, "and I've had enough of your family's attempts to control my life." Edward's face crumbled with guilt. "Sarah, You don't get to walk away from this anymore," Sarah said. "I've raised Lily on my own, without your help. But I won't let you or Victoria intimidate her. She deserves better." Edward sank into his chair, his hands shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. I was a coward. But Lily is my daughter. What do you want me to do?" "Own up to your mistakes," Sarah said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not for me, but for her. She deserves the truth." As Sarah drove home, she felt a weight lift from her chest. For years, she had carried the burden of Edward's betrayal, but now she had reclaimed her voice. When she arrived, Lily was in the garden with Ethan, their laughter filling the air. Sarah watched them from the porch, a sense of peace settling over her. Her past no longer defined her. She had faced it, and in doing so, she had carved a path forward, one filled with resilience, truth, and hope. The following days passed like a whirlwind. Sarah's confrontation with Edward Parker had stirred emotions she hadn't felt in years: anger, relief, and a deep sense of liberation. For the first time, she felt as though the chains of her past had been broken. But with that freedom came uncertainty. What would happen now that the truth was out? Edward's promise to do right by Lily lingered in Sarah's mind. He hadn't said how, and a part of her doubted his sincerity. Yet, she couldn't deny the vulnerability in his voice or the remorse in his eyes. Whether he followed through or not, Sarah knew she had done her part. She had stood up for herself and her daughter, and that was enough. One afternoon, as Lily tended to her garden, Sarah sat on the porch, sipping tea and watching the clouds roll across the sky. The peace of the moment was broken by the arrival of David, his car pulling into the driveway. He stepped out, holding a folder, and wearing an expression of quiet determination. "Sarah," he said, joining her on the porch, "I have news." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Good or bad?" "Both," David replied, handing her the folder. Inside were documents detailing Edward Parker's recent financial dealings. "I've been looking into the Parkers' business practices. Let's just say they've been less than ethical." Sarah's stomach tightened. "What does this have to do with us?" David sat beside her, his tone gentle but firm. "Edward's guilt over Lily isn't just personal, it's also professional. He's been trying to clean up his family's image, starting with making amends to you." Sarah's eyes widened. "What kind of amends?" "He's offering a trust fund for Lily," David said. "Enough to cover her education and give her a stable future." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "A trust funds? That's generous." "It's also his way of avoiding a public scandal," David said, his voice tinged with skepticism. "He knows the truth could destroy his family's reputation. This is damage control." Sarah stared at the documents, her emotions swirling. The offer was tempting security. For Lily was something she had always dreamed of, but accepting it felt like a compromise, a way of letting Edward off the hook without truly owning up to his actions. That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, she broached the subject with Lily. "Sweetheart, there's something we need to talk about." Lily looked up from her sketchbook, her pencil hovering mid-draw. "What is it, Mom?" Sarah hesitated. Your biological father wants to help you. He's offering to pay for your education." Lily's brow furrowed. "My father? You mean Mr. Parker?" "Yes," Sarah said softly. "He feels bad for what he's done, and this is his way of making up for it." Lily's face was a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Do you think we should take it?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "It's a big decision, and I want you to be part of it. What do you think?" Lily thought for a moment before answering. "If it helps us, maybe it's okay, but I don't want him to think he can just buy forgiveness." Sarah smiled faintly, pride swelling in her chest. "You're a smart girl, Lily. Let's think about it together." While Sarah mulled over the decision, Lily threw herself into her garden and her friendship with Ethan. The two spent hours planting, drawing, and dreaming up big plans for their little patch of earth. One afternoon, as they worked, Ethan looked over at Lily and asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive Mr. Parker?" Lily paused, her hands covered in dirt. "I don't know. He hurt my mom a lot, but maybe if he tries hard enough, I can." Ethan nodded. "My dad always says forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about letting go of the hurt so it doesn't hold you back." Lily considered his words, her heart feeling lighter. "I think I'd like to let go, someday." The next week, Edward reached out, requesting to meet with Lily. Sarah was hesitant, but ultimately left the choice to her daughter. Lily agreed, her curiosity outweighing her fear. The meeting took place at a quiet cafe. Edward arrived early, looking nervous and out of place in the modest setting. When Lily and Sarah walked in, he stood quickly, his hands fidgeting with his jacket. "Thank you for coming," Edward said, his voice trembling slightly. Lily nodded, sliding into the booth across from him. Sarah sat beside her, offering silent support. "I wanted to say how sorry I am," Edward began. "For everything. For not being there. For letting fear control me." Lily looked at him, her young eyes steady and searching. "Why did you leave my mom?" Edward's shoulders sagged. "Because I was weak. I let other people decide my life for me, and I hurt the people I cared about most. I can't undo that, but I want to try to make things better. If you'll let me." Lily's voice was quiet but firm. "You can't just say sorry and make it all go away." Edward nodded, his throat tightening. "I know, but I'll do whatever it takes to show you I mean it." Lily glanced at Sarah, then back at Edward. "You have to try really hard." I will, Edward promised, his voice thick with emotion. As they left the cafe, Sarah noticed a new strength in Lily's posture. Her daughter, so young yet so wise, was beginning to find her own voice. Back at home, Lily said, I think we should take the trust fund. It can help us, and I can use it to do good things. Sarah hugged her tightly. That's a brave decision, sweetheart, and a wise one. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Lily began to heal in earnest. With the trust fund in place, Sarah could finally plan for a brighter future for her daughter. Lily's garden thrived, a testament to the growth and resilience they both shared. And though the wounds of the past hadn't disappeared, they were no longer an anchor. Together, Sarah and Lily were learning to let go, to forgive, and to embrace the possibilities of what lay ahead. The past had shaped them, but it did not define them. Their journey was far from over, but their hearts were lighter, their steps stronger, and their eyes fixed on the future. The crisp air of early autumn filled the garden as Lily worked on her latest project, a trellis for climbing vines. Ethan was helping her, hammering the wooden beams together while they chatted about school and her flowers. The garden had become a symbol of their growth, a place where Lily could turn her struggles into something beautiful. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, a small smile playing on her lips. Despite the challenges they had faced, Lily was thriving. The once timid girl who avoided eye contact now radiated confidence. The trust fund Edward had set up was a safety net Sarah never thought they would have, but she was determined to teach Lily the value of hard work and integrity. The ringing of Sarah's phone interrupted her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and hesitated before answering. Sarah, it's David, her father's voice came through, steady but serious. I think we need to talk. I've uncovered something about the Parkers. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What now? There's been some creative accounting in their business dealings, David said. Edward may be trying to make amends personally, but professionally, there are still problems. I thought you should know. Sarah leaned against the counter, her free hand gripping its edge. What does this mean for Lily? For us? It means you're in a position to help, David said. The Parkers are trying to keep everything under wraps, but the truth will come out eventually. If you step forward with what you know, you could protect others from being hurt by their schemes. Sarah closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Exposing the Parkers could lead to retaliation, but staying silent meant allowing their wrongdoings to continue unchecked. I need time to think, she said finally. This isn't just about me anymore. That evening, Sarah sat down with Lily after dinner, explaining the situation as simply as she could. Sweetheart, do you remember how I told you that the truth is important, even when it's hard? Lily nodded, her eyes wide. Is this about Mr. Parker? Sarah sighed, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. It is. He's trying to do the right thing now, but he and his family have done things that hurt other people. I have the chance to speak up, but it might make things difficult for us. Lily tilted her head, considering her mother's words. Would it help other people? I think it would, Sarah said softly. Then we should do it, Lily said with quiet conviction. Even if it's hard. Sarah's chest tightened with pride. You're so brave, Lily. Lily smiled, her fingers brushing the petals of a small daisy she had picked earlier. You taught me to be, Mom. The next day, Sarah met with David and a legal advisor he had brought in to ensure everything was handled properly. They reviewed documents, gathering evidence to expose the Parkers' unethical practices. David placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. You're doing the right thing, Sarah. No matter what happens, I'll be here to support you and Lily. Sarah nodded, drawing strength from his words. Thank you, Dad. When the news broke, it sent shockwaves through the community. The Parkers' businesses were exposed for tax fraud and exploitation, and their carefully curated reputation began to crumble. Edward released a public statement, accepting responsibility for his part in the misconduct, while Victoria vehemently denied any wrongdoing. At school, Lily faced mixed reactions. Some classmates admired her family's courage, while others, influenced by their parents' loyalties to the Parkers, whispered behind her back. But Lily held her head high, drawing strength from the garden she had cultivated and the support of friends like Ethan. One day, during recess, Emily Parker approached Lily. Her usual smugness was replaced with an uncertain expression. "Lily, can we talk?" Lily hesitated, but nodded. "What do you want, Emily?" Emily looked down, scuffing her shoe against the ground. I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know my family was doing those things. And I shouldn't have been mean to you." Lily studied Emily's face, searching for sincerity. "Why now?" Emily shrugged, her voice quiet. "I guess I realized it's not your fault, and I didn't want to keep being the bad guy." Lily softened, offering a small smile. "Thanks. That means a lot." Emily gave a hesitant smile in return before walking away. It wasn't the start of a friendship, but it was a step toward understanding. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself becoming a voice for others in the community. Her courage inspired several former employees of the Parkers to come forward with their own stories, leading to reforms in local labor practices. The experience was exhausting, but it gave Sarah a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. One evening, after a particularly long day, Sarah sat on the porch with David, watching Lily and Ethan play tag in the yard. "You've done something remarkable, Sarah," David said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've turned a difficult situation into a way to help others." Sarah glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "I couldn't have done it without you. For a long time, I didn't trust you. But you've shown me that people can change." David smiled, his eyes softening. "I'm glad I've earned your trust, and I'm proud of you. Of both of you." As autumn deepened, the garden became a riot of color, with sunflowers, marigolds, and climbing vines weaving a tapestry of life. It was a testament to Lily's resilience and the healing that had taken place within their family. One afternoon, as Sarah and Lily worked side by side planting tulip bulbs for the spring, Lily looked up at her mother. "Mom," she said, her voice thoughtful, "do you think things will always be this hard?" Sarah wiped her hands on her gardening apron and knelt beside her daughter. "Life will always have challenges, sweetheart, but we've learned how to face them, and as long as we stick together, we'll be okay." Lily nodded, her small hand reaching for Sarah's. "I think we can handle it." Sarah smiled, pulling Lily into a hug. "I know we can." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the garden in golden light, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. They had faced the past, stood up for the truth, and emerged stronger. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time, the future felt bright. Together they were ready to face whatever came next. The arrival of spring brought a sense of renewal to Lily's garden. The tulip bulbs she and Sarah had planted months earlier bloomed in bursts of vibrant red, yellow, and pink. Lily stood among the flowers, marveling at their beauty, her heart swelling with pride. The garden had grown into a reflection of her own journey, one of resilience, patience, and hope. Inside the house, Sarah prepared breakfast, her movements light and cheerful. The past few months had been a whirlwind of change, but the dust was finally settling. The legal fallout from the Parkers' scandal had shifted the power dynamics in their community, leaving room for new voices like Sarah's to rise. She had become a quiet advocate for workers' rights, using her story to inspire others to stand up for themselves. Lily rushed inside, holding a freshly picked bouquet. "Mom, look, aren't they beautiful?" Sarah turned, her smile bright as she admired the flowers. "They're perfect, sweetheart. Why don't you put them in the vase on the table?" Lily nodded, carefully arranging the blooms. As she worked, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught their attention. Moments later, David appeared in the doorway, carrying a large folder and a proud smile. "Morning, ladies," he said, setting the folder on the kitchen table. "I have some exciting news." Sarah raised an eyebrow as she poured coffee. "What's this about?" David opened the folder, revealing plans for a new community center. "After everything we've been through, I thought it was time to give back in a bigger way. This will be a place where families like ours can find support, job training, counseling, after-school programs, and I'd like both of you to be involved." Lily's eyes lit up. "A community centers? Can we have a garden there too?" David chuckled. "Of course. In fact, I was hoping you'd help design it." Lily clapped her hands, excitement bubbling over. "I'd love to." Sarah looked at the plans, her heart swelling with gratitude. "This is an incredible idea, Dad. Thank you for including us." David placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression earnest. "You've taught me what it means to truly care for a community. This wouldn't be happening without you." Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Lily worked closely with David and a team of volunteers to bring the community center to life. Lily poured her energy into planning the garden, sketching layouts, and choosing plants that would thrive in the space. Ethan joined her, helping to gather supplies and brainstorm ideas. Sarah took on a leadership role, coordinating with local organizations to ensure the center would meet the needs of the community. It was hard work, but it felt purposeful, and for the first time in years, she felt truly fulfilled. The grand opening of the center was a joyous occasion. Families from all over the community gathered to celebrate, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The garden Lily had envisioned was already taking shape, with rows of flowers and vegetables planted by the children who would benefit from the center's programs. Lily stood by the entrance, handing out bouquets she had arranged herself. When Emily Parker approached, Lily hesitated, unsure of what to say. But Emily surprised her by holding out a small pot of daisies. "I thought these might look nice in the garden," Emily said softly. Lily smiled, taking the pot. "Thanks, Emily. That's really kind of you." Emily nodded, a hint of a smile on her face before she walked away. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it felt like a step forward, and Lily appreciated it. As the evening wore on, Sarah stood on the center's small stage, addressing the crowd. "When my daughter and I moved to this community, we didn't know what to expect," she began, her voice steady. "We faced challenges, but we also found incredible support from people who believed in us." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "This center is a testament to what can happen when we come together. It's a place where everyone is welcome, where everyone has a chance to grow. Thank you for helping us make it a reality." The applause that followed was thunderous. Sarah stepped off the stage, tears in her eyes as she embraced Lily. That night, as they sat on the porch, Sarah, Lily, and David watched the stars twinkle above. The quiet hum of the night was broken only by the occasional chirp of crickets. "Do you think the center will make a difference?" Lily asked, resting her head on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah kissed the top of her head. "I know it will, sweetheart. And so will you." David nodded, his voice warm. "You've already made a difference, Lily. You remind us all that even small acts of kindness can create big change." Lily smiled, her heart full. "I want to keep helping people, just like you, Grandpa." David's eyes softened. "And you will, I have no doubt about that." As the days turned into weeks, the community center became a thriving hub of activity. Lily's garden flourished, becoming a gathering place for children and adults alike. Sarah continued her advocacy work, and David remained a steadfast presence in their lives. For the first time, the future felt bright and full of promise. The struggles they had faced were not forgotten, but they had been transformed into a source of strength. Together, they had built something beautiful, something that would endure. And as Lily tended her garden, her hands in the soil and her heart full of hope, she knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. As the story of Sarah, Lily, and their journey toward resilience and hope ends, we are reminded that kindness and perseverance can transform even the most difficult challenges into opportunities for growth. Their story is a testament to the power of family, community, and the courage to face the past while building a brighter future. If you enjoyed this heartwarming tale, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire, uplift, and touch the heart. Share this story with friends and family, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your suggestions for future stories. Together, let's continue spreading messages of hope and compassion, one story at a time. Thank you for watching.